so proudly we hail, as the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets set there, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please be seated. For the information of our guests, you may be wondering what happens to our cadets when they leave. These three ladies and gentlemen that just sang for us, they're headed to Annapolis, West Point, and the University of Dartmouth. Good example of great people we have here. Before I have Colonel Doyle come up and welcome you, I'm going to give you an idea about the format. Essentially, we have now five gentlemen that'll help us. They'll be each speaking about 15 minutes about their experiences and from Valley Forge to the military and life in general. And then we'll have, when they're finished, we'll have a half-hour question and answer period. Think about what you might want to ask these folks when they're finished. And then later, we have a lunch. And if you would like to join with and meet one of these speakers on a more intimate level, you'd be invited to do that as well. We have some people already signed up for that. If others would like to do that, we'll try to accommodate you afterwards. I'd like to call on our president, Colonel Jim Doyle, for a welcome.
Good morning. Captain Hale did not brag enough just now. Those three young folks that sang the national anthem, they all are wonderful Valley Forge stories. Cadet, I'm going to wreck her name, Alagasis, who is the female, the young lady. She was sent here as a foundation scholar by the Naval Academy. She just missed getting in the Naval Academy last spring, so the Naval Academy Foundation sent her here. Prep for a year at Valley Forge, do well, and you will get an appointment to the Naval Academy. All of the service academies do that with us. Some years we've had as many as 40. We have never failed to put someone in the service academy who came here as a prepster. And when they get there, they do very well. Cadet Farkas is the larger young man on the left, came here to the academy and is going to Dartmouth College, an Ivy League school, on an NROTC scholarship. But I think the most compelling story is Cadet Heck. I guess he's the tenor, the one in the middle. Cadet Heck was not selected to go to a service academy at his high school last year, from his high school last year. So he came here as an unsponsored student and went into the program we have for our foundation scholars who come here. We call them prepsters. So he went into what we call the self-prep program, unsponsored. and he has been selected to the Naval Academy and to the Military Academy at West Point. So please join me and cadets as well in a round of applause for these 3 very good students. Well, now that I've got my shameless plug for Valley Forge out of the way, I'll open this Valor Weekend up. I'd like to welcome you all to Valor Weekend. I was thinking about my remarks and how I was going to start this off. This has been inserted into a very busy schedule. And you know, I want to set the right tone for everybody. And you know, and I was going to start off saying, this is a wonderful opportunity for the younger generations to learn about their brothers who went before them. And I said, no, you know, I'm not going to do that. I don't need to sell this weekend like a used car. You know, this can stand on its own. So I thought I'd start with a personal story. Many Sundays, I'm sitting in chapel and I'm talking to you young men out here and young ladies. You're sitting in chapel, you're getting to the end of the service. You've just heard a particularly boring speaker who went over his time limit. You're thinking, man, oh man, I've got to get out of chapel, run down to the barracks, jump in my parade gear, run back to the main area, get formed up, have the parade, and then I can go to lunch, you know, and that's how Sundays go around here. And at the tail end of the chapel service, we recognize 4 of our fallen brothers. And the first captain will get up and call off 4 names from various conflicts, and we will play taps and honor them. And I have to tell you, sometimes my mind wanders because I have just listened to that same boring speaker. I have to go to parade, and then after that, I have to have a luncheon for the chapel speaker, and then Monday morning, I'd probably talk to the Chamber of Commerce in the morning or somebody like that. And, you know, my mind is not on what it should be on. And I kind of wake up, hopefully at the tail end, and say, boy, you need to concentrate. Who were these guys? You know, who were these guys? What did they do? They're not just names. They were your brothers. They were your brothers who went before you. Today, we have an opportunity to learn about 6 of your brothers. Their history, their exploits, spans World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the ill-defined War on Terror. Let me make another personal observation. I think Mr. Reddy is the only man on the campus older than me. I'm old. And I am a product of the 3rd conflict, the Vietnam conflict, and the 4th conflict, the War on Terror. The folks that you will listen to who participated in World War II and Korea, there are very few opportunities left to get a first-hand rendition of their exploits. So, you know, this is a rare opportunity. So, with that, I want to welcome William R. Barker, class of '42, a World War II veteran, Alan E. Wasileski, class of 1953, a Korean veteran, Brendan O'Connor, class of 1980, a veteran of the War on Terror, Paul Galante, who will be your speaker on Sunday, is a former POW from the Vietnam conflict, class of 1957, and class of 1937's Eric Fisher Wood will be represented by his son, Eric Fisher Wood III, and Richard R. McCullough, class of 1945, who was killed in action in Korea, will be represented by his brother, Thomas McCullough. It's my hope that Valor Weekend will serve as a source of inspiration for each and every one of you. I'm getting to the end here. I've tried to make my introductory to this weekend personal for you cadets. You should not lose sight of the fact that we have lost 7 cadets in the War on Terror. It might be 8, it might be 6, but I think it's 7. Some of those same cadets had to listen to me rag on them about their shoes, their uniforms, and their haircuts, just like I do with some of you. What I'm trying to get across to you is that you are one step away from history. So for me, the point of Valor Weekend is about knowing our history, knowing who your brothers were who went before you. Let me end with a very overused quote by a historian named Alfred Santayana, and I'll get it pretty right, but it's a very popular quote, and is, "Those who fail to learn the lessons of history are doomed, are condemned to repeat those lessons." So, enjoy your weekend, enjoy your speakers. Thank you very much.
Our first speaker this morning is William R. Barker, Academy class of 42. At 90 years old, is Valley Forge's most senior living recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross. Bill was captain of B Company his first class year. As a cadet, he was a member of the Anthony Wayne Legion Guard and was a varsity athlete in both football and track. He was also a member of the rifle team. During Bill's era, graduating from the academy included the opportunity for early commissioning. He entered the Army and became a second lieutenant and deployed to Italy in 1943 as a platoon leader with the 36th Texas Division. On 21 through 22 January 1944, his unit went into action near St. Angelo, Italy. During this engagement, Lieutenant Barker demonstrated courageous leadership by rescuing several of his men from a perilous minefield while under heavy enemy fire and disregarding his own wounds. Mr. Barker now resides in Bedford, Massachusetts, and is accompanied today by his son and 2 grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Barker.
Good morning, honored guests. I hope you can hear me all right. It so happens that I'm going to address the men of the Corps, basically, because you're here for one reason. Somebody believed in you, either your mother, your father, or your parents. I know for a fact that they have sacrificed to put you here. You won't realize it until you get out on your own. Maybe even when you're 40 or 50 and look back and say, how in the heck did they do it? come up with the money and sacrifice for you and for your future. And this is why you're here. I would like to think that you appreciate the fact that their sacrifice is going to pay off in your future. And to make something of yourself, always remember that they sacrificed for you. End of speech. But at this moment, I would like to introduce a dear friend of mine and fellow classmate, Captain Dix Jordan, who was a combat engineer officer in the Pacific Theater of Operations during World War II. He has a very interesting little story to tell, and we won't take too much of your time. Dix?
Get my hand there.
Right.
Once I'm up, I'm okay. Good morning, everybody. Bill has told me as recently as about 10 minutes ago, he wanted me to say a few words. So the preparation for this has not been very well done. But I do appreciate the opportunity to tell you cadets what my experiences were at Valley Forge and how much in a lifetime they have done for me. So I'll take my couple of minutes saying thank you to Valley Forge, if I may. My association here started, I had gone to Lower Merion High School, which is down the road at Peace and Ardmore. I graduated from high school in 1939, and I was living the best of all worlds. I had a girlfriend, I had a car, I had a job. Until one time my father said, you know, you're going to be sucked into a war here, and I think it'd be well if you were to consider going to Valley Forge to get a little idea of your left foot from your right foot. So I came into Valley Forge in mid-year in 1941. Anybody here has a relationship to 1941? Good for you, okay. And I saw Willie Coons somewhere around here. Where is Willie? Put your hand up if you would. Willie probably ran the school in 1941. He's a great guy and deserves all of the accolades that he's gotten. But anyway, my father was right. We lived in Ardmore, and so it was not uncommon for me to be able to go home for dinner on Sunday night. And I remember coming back from home, walking in through the main gate towards the school, and one of my classmates came running down the walkway saying, the Japanese had just bombed Pearl Harbor. And my question and everybody else's question at that time was, where the hell is Pearl Harbor? Well, we quickly found out where Pearl Harbor was. The next day we were gathered, as you were all gathered here in the chapel, when we listened to President Roosevelt declaring war, and General Baker was the host and the speaker then, told us a little bit of what we were getting into. So I graduated from the junior college in '42. Bill Barker here was running B Company. I was not in one of the infantry companies because I was in the color guard. And I was the shortest guy in the color guard. The two brothers that carried the colors their last name was Merwin, M-E-R-W-I-N, and they were both, or each, about 6'6" or 6'5", something like that. And I was off to the side, so I was in the color guard. I graduated in June of '42, and the very next day I enlisted in the Army. My father had been in the Corps of Engineers, and as a result I chose the engineers. And back in those days, if you enlisted, you could pick where you wanted to go. Well, the Army, shall I say, lied to me. They told me that I would go to the engineers. The next thing I know, I'm in a train going to place called Cape Pickett, Virginia, which was a medical administration corps entranceway. And because of Valley Forge, my first job was to train newly arrived doctors and dentists who were brought into the Army almost like a draft. I was training them in close order drill, how to do a left face and a right face, and I've never again worked with such a disinterested group as a bunch of doctors and dentists that had just brought into the Army. So anyway, so very quickly my objective was another old Army saying, how do you get out of this outfit? And I found that by looking, there was an opening at the Officers Candidate School at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, which was the engineer headquarters. I applied for, and I'm sure it was because of Valley Forge and my background here that I got to OCS. And one of the reasons I asked if anybody here is really friendly with any 1941 people, I got to OCS and actually got through OCS and got my commission as a second lieutenant before the school year of 43, I guess it was actually operating. My first opportunity to take a couple of days off was the couple of days pass that they gave me after getting out of OCS. I came to Valley Forge, and one of the reasons I asked about that class 1942, I think the regimental commander at that time was a guy by the name of Dewey Pfeiffer. But I remember when I came in as a plebe, he was always on my back. And so when I had that couple days leave in the Army, I immediately looked for him. And there I was in my sparkling second lieutenant's uniform, and he had to salute me. So that was one of my first occasions of pride in Valley Forge. Another thing that happened good for me, strictly because of Valley Forge, was my first assignment was to an outfit in California. 154th Engineers Combat Battalion was our title. Back in those days, as a second lieutenant, you would actually carry little name cards like you would if you were in business. So I passed the name card in to the adjutant, saluting the adjutant. He said, "What are you saluting me for? I only got out of OCS last week myself." So I had done that wrong, but I then met with the colonel, and the colonel had a nice conversation with me, looked over my Valley Forge record in particular, and he said, "Well, Lieutenant, it's nice to have you with me, and we're going to do a lot of great things in this service, and I want you to know, this is 4 days out of OCS, you're going to be the company commander of A Company," which, heck, I didn't even know how to pitch a tent, I guess. But anyway, so I was the company commander of A Company. And another Valley Forge thing that happened to me, after I was in this outfit for a couple of months, a letter came through from headquarters in the Army that any West Pointers that had graduated at such and such a date as second lieutenants were now to be automatically made first lieutenants. So the colonel called me in again, and he said, "Well," he said, "we got a problem here. You're a second lieutenant, and now 2 of the lieutenants that are under you are first lieutenants." And I thought, uh-oh, here goes my company commander job. And he said, "I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to make you a first lieutenant." So Valley Forge came through dozens and dozens of times for me, and I really welcome this opportunity to thank you people. Hope you have similar experiences as what I've had. I ended up the war, my outfit was attached to the 1st Marines in the Palau Islands, and it's kind of tough to not have some experience of valor when you're attached to the 1st Marines, but I got through that. We then went over to load up to be the first of the troops going into Japan, and our first stop was a little town in Japan called Aomori, a little seaside town, and somehow or other we got sent there by mistake, so they said the second day, well, you're in the wrong place, now we're going to send you over to the island, the northern island. So I got sent over there, and this is one of the really interesting experiences on my part. So we went into a port city called Sapporo. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It was sort of the home of the Olympics not too long ago. We went into Sapporo and took a train up to a little town called the Sashikawa. When we arrived in the Sashikawa at this railroad station, there was a contingency there, including the mayor of Sashikawa and a Japanese army band. If you can believe this, the army band was playing God Bless America when we arrived up there to occupy Japan. So again, all those fun or interesting experiences were because of Valley Forge. And I do thank you and everybody here that has an association for Valley Forge for making it possible. And that's the end of my story.
Our next speaker is Captain Alan Wes Wesleski, United States Navy retired, Academy class of 53 and 55 college. From a working family in the coal mines of Pennsylvania, Captain Wesleski came to Valley Forge on a band scholarship. He was a first-generation immigrant whose parents spoke Russian at home. As a cadet, he was a member of the Anthony Wayne Legion Guard, served as a yearbook junior college editor, and sang in the choir. Upon graduation, he qualified for naval flight training at Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, and became a helicopter pilot. While serving with Marine Helicopter Attack Squadron 3, he flew over 450 combat missions in Vietnam. He received the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism on 9 March 1968 for the rescue of 2 critically wounded United States Army advisors while under intense enemy fire. Captain Wesleski now resides in Virginia. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Wesleski.
Ni hao. Thanks. Доброе утро. Yazoo. Guten Morgen. Bonjour. Good day, ye. I'll be brief. I'm asking this question of you. What is the plebeian smallest animal to the largest animal to the human? What is its primary mission? Anybody? To what? You young man, come here. You have a choice. You have a choice between a golden dollar or a $5 bill. Which would you like? It's yours. Okay? If survival is the prime function of any human being, tell me who is the most important person in this room? Who? I don't hear the answer. Yourself. Did you say that? Okay. A hand back here. Yes, you. You have a choice. A silver Kennedy 50-cent piece or a $10 bill. Which? That's yours. Oh, by the way, did I get your attention? All right, the next question is, if survival is primary to every human being, propagation follows. I got it. So what makes the difference in somebody who is trying to keep their life, disregarding that basic rule of self-survival, to help somebody else? What do you call that? Courage. Part of your motto, courage. But it's also another word. It's called valor. Valor is not well defined. It means taking a risk of your life to reach out and help somebody else save their life. Where did I learn that? Right here at Valley Forge. How did I get here? I was a street person. At age 14, my father said, "You're going to Pitt." He didn't mean the University of, he meant the coal mine Pitt. You see, I come from Russian immigrants. Both sets of grandparents came from Russia with their children. Two of those children married. They were my parents. At age 14, I was working in a steel mill. I was third helper on an open hearth furnace. I would bring a paycheck home every 2 weeks, get the snot beat out of me. My old man would take the money, go gambling and drinking. He was an alcoholic and a confirmed gambler. By the time I was 15 and a half, we had a heated argument that ended up in a fist fight. I got evicted from the house. How's that get your attention? What happened to you? I became a street person living under people's back porches, scavenging food from scraps. But I had a mentor in my high school band. I happened to be a musician, and apparently a damn good one. That mentor helped set up an audition here at Valley Forge for the band. I hitchhiked from Pittsburgh to Wayne. Took the audition on a Saturday afternoon. Got a letter 2 weeks later saying I had to take a college board exam for placement so they could place me in school. And I had to come up with $500 earnest money. The scholarship was a full boat ride. Uniforms, barracks, a horn to play, people to meet. There was an opportunity here that changed my entire life. And the opportunity is yours if you want to change your life and structure it. Who wants to be somebody to help others. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Who would be willing to give their life under a combat scenario to help somebody else? Cadet back there in the corner, come up here. He happens to be the first captain. You have a choice: an Eisenhower silver dollar or a $20 bill.
Eisenhower silver dollar.
Yours.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and you females. We got female admirals and generals. Get out there and give them hell.
Our next speaker is Sergeant Major Brennan O'Connor, United States Army, class of 1980, college. He was born into a military family at West Point, New York, and was exposed to the military at a young age. His father was deployed to Vietnam and was killed in action in April of 1968. Brennan followed his father's footsteps and enrolled at Valley Forge in 1978. As a cadet, he was a member of the Anthony Wayne Legion Guard and participated in the Army Air Assault Parachute Team. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant after graduating and spent 14 years as an officer in the Army Special Operations Reserve units. Resigning his commission in 1994, he enlisted in the regular Army as a Special Forces medic. In 2005, as a Sergeant First Class, he was deployed to Afghanistan as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. He received the Distinguished Service Cross for Extraordinary Heroism on 24 June 2006 while leading a quick reaction force to support a surrounded patrol in order to rescue 2 wounded comrades. During the course of this action that ensued for 18 hours and under intense enemy fire, he crawled alone and unprotected 200 yards to reach wounded soldiers. He provided medical care and rescued the wounded, carrying one of the men across open ground to safety. Sergeant Major O'Connor is currently serving on active duty and resides with his wife Meg and their 4 children in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Major O'Connor.
Sir, do I have the Corps? Is the Corps mine? Corps mine? Gentlemen of the Corps and the Corps only? If you're former members of the Corps, you can remain seated. Members of the Corps, on your feet! Stretch. 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 Wake up! Okay. Do you guys have a motto that you can yell when I tell you take seats? How about give me a hoo-ah? When I say take seats, sound off with a loud and thunderous hoo-ah! Do you understand? Sir. I'm not a sir. Take seats! One more time, stand up. Ladies and gentlemen of the Corps, take seats! All right. All right. So Valley Forge. Oh my gosh, the last time I was here, I was probably walking to Merritt's out there. How many of you here at home only have a mother or a father? In other words, one of your parents are gone. Raise your hands high, please. Well, that's where I grew up. I didn't grow up with a father. He died in Vietnam. So when I came here, I needed a connection to my father. And boy, did I find it. Boy, did I find it. The director of admissions was a gentleman named Schoendorfer. Colonel Schoendorfer and my father had been classmates at the Army Command and General Staff School. General or Colonel Schoendorfer's son, back in 1967, was a Boy Scout. And he was testing to be for a promotion to the next Boy Scout grade. My father was a Boy Scout troop leader, and he said, he was testing him, and he said, "Hey, you done very well, congratulations." And he stuck out his hand in a Boy Scout handshake, and young Mr. Schoendorfer enthusiastically grasped that hand, but he didn't give a Boy Scout handshake. So my father says, "Oh, sorry, you're a no-go at this station. You'll have to test again." Why do I tell this story? Well, for one, it's the connection to Valley Forge. But two, it's also, you are expected. Things are expected of you. You are coming out of this school, and behind you, you have the reputation of this school. In front of you, you have your whole life. You have your whole life. And you will look back on your time here at Valley Forge. The friends that you make at Valley Forge, you will see again and again in your future. I'm an actively serving Army Sergeant Major. Next week, I'm going down to Fort Benning. Fort Benning right now is commanded by a guy named Major General Herbert McMaster, classmate of mine from Valley Forge. When I was in Afghanistan, I ran into a classmate of mine. He was a lieutenant colonel, I was a sergeant first class. I still think I had the better end of the deal, by the way, because I get to do stuff that you don't normally get to do as an officer, which is one of the motivations why I resigned my commission. I served in the Reserve Special Forces unit over here in New Jersey. Anyone here from New Jersey? What exit? Point Pleasant, what exit on the Jersey Turnpike? You don't know, huh? Is it off the Garden State Parkway? Oh, so it works. Where are you from? Cinnaminson? Did you say Cinnaminson? Oh, Somerset, okay. So over there at Fort Dix is where I started my Army career as a second lieutenant in the Army Reserve. Had a great time, and let me tell you, I was hooked. I really, really enjoyed my time in the Army Reserve and as a Special Forces officer. I came to that like Peter Pan moment where I had to accept promotion to the next grade, which would take me away from the troops and into those vital and very important staff positions. Well, I decided, you know what, there's a lot of stuff I wanted to do in the Army that I didn't get to do as a Special Forces Reserve officer. And boy, what a great decision I think it turned out to be. Because, let's see now, I've jumped out of a perfectly good airplane at 13,000 feet. I have been on a German submarine, a U-boat. I've climbed volcanoes in Ecuador, in Iceland. I've served as an Army medic. And as an Army medic, I've given birth. I'm sorry, I haven't given birth. I assisted the birth of a young boy in a jungle environment in Ecuador. I assisted the arrival of a set of twins in the most modern hospital in Maryland. I've also held the hand of an American soldier who paid the ultimate sacrifice. But I did all these things as an outgrowth of what I learned here at Valley Forge. At Valley Forge. It's been a great ride. It really has for me. You know, I was talking to Dr. Murray. Is he still here? Dr. Murray? There he is. Yeah, Dr. Murray and I still stay in touch with Dr. Murray's first class. I think class is 79. So I still stay in touch with those folks, and I stay in touch with my classmates. Heck, I pinned a classmate of mine. I'm an Army Master Sergeant at the time. I'm pinning his colonel leaves on his shoulder. Well, that was kind of that raised some eyebrows, because usually you have like general officers do that. But the point is you're making connections. When I used to travel in my work as in the Army Special Forces, I would travel to other countries: Colombia, Brazil, Ecuador, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and I would look up my classmates. So you're making friendships here that will take you a long, long way. A long way. I came here as a child who as a young man who needed some direction, and I got it here at Valley Forge. I was inspired. I mean, I always wanted to serve in the Army. Quite frankly, that's all I ever wanted to do. But making the friends here, making the connections here, getting to see these World War II vets that worked as our cadre. Marshal Sanger, Colonel Rennie, Ted Metaxas. These are great Americans who inspired me to maintain my connection both to the nation in service and to the friends and family that I consider the new family that I gained here at Valley Forge. I want to thank you all very much for having me here. And one more time, on your feet. At my command, I want you to sound off with a loud and thunderous hoo-ah. Take seats! Hoo-ah! Thank you, gentlemen.
Our final speaker today is Commander Paul Gallanti, United States Navy retired. Commander Gallanti graduated from Valley Forge Military Academy in 1957 and the United States Naval Academy in 1962. A Navy pilot serving on the USS Hancock, he was shot down and captured while flying his 97th combat mission in June of 1966. He remained a prisoner of war in North Vietnam's infamous Hanoi Hilton for nearly 7 years. Released from Hanoi in February of 1973, he served on active duty in Navy recruiting in Richmond, Virginia, and served as battalion officer at the United States Naval Academy. His personal decorations include the Silver Star, 2 Legions of Merit with Combat V, the Bronze Star with Combat V, 9 Air Medals, and 2 Purple Hearts. After retiring from the Navy, he was employed as an executive and lobbyist for several health-related professional associations in Richmond. The Virginia War Memorial Foundation named its new $8 million educational center after him and his wife. In 2010, Governor Bob McDonnell appointed him Commissioner of the Virginia Department of Veterans Services, the agency that provides services to Virginia's 860,000 veterans, and to the Board of Visitors of the Virginia Military Institute. He and his wife have 2 grown sons and reside in Richmond, Virginia. Ladies and gentlemen, Commander Gallanti.
I think I'll get one of these walking around mics too, because I'm so short compared to these other guys, you won't see me over the podium. I'm not going to walk around like the Army grunt and this helicopter pilots are used to flying low. I've got to stand up here just a little bit. Can everybody hear me okay? So, okay, wonderful. Okay, I've known some of these guys forever by reputation. My dad was a World War II veteran. I was born in '39, so I still remember the tail end of World War II as a little kid. And I remember he built air bases, an aviation engineer, and I grew up on air bases as a little kid. I knew what a P-38 was before I could count to 38, and a B-24 before I could count to 24. I really wanted to do what these guys were doing. As luck would have it, we kept moving around. I saw my first jet in 1948, flown by Captain Chuck Yeager, flying out of Muroc Air Force Base in the top secret YP-80. I knew what I wanted to do. Did everything I could to get there. Went over to Japan. I got to meet the jet aces because we used the same rest hotel that they did when they came back after flying their missions. I met Jim Jabara and Gabby Gabreski. I was 10 years old. Now, this made a big impression. When the Young Husband Scholarship Program started here, we were living in Chicago. It was a rotten school. I knew I wanted to be a pilot. The best way to do that was to go into one of the academies and get a regular commission. So I ended up here on a scholarship and ended up distinguishing myself by graduating as a private. I went all the way through here, ended up being a second lieutenant, got busted 2 weeks before graduation. I'm not going to go into the details on that because I don't want to give you guys any idea. It's going to get you in a lot of trouble. But one of the stories of my life, I like to consider myself sort of like a modern day Forrest Gump. I've been everywhere something was happening. I really didn't do anything to cause it. I just happened to be there. It was the Navy, they call it a coffee mess treasure when you're the lowest ranking guy in the wardroom. The lowest ranking officer takes care of all the money to buy the coffee and the donuts and everything for the rest of them. Well, I've always been a coffee mess treasure. Here I am up on this stage with two Distinguished Service Cross recipients and a Navy Cross recipient and me. So how did that happen? Well, it's Forrest Gump. Here I am again. I finally got to fly. I did all the stuff you had to do. I went here, and I learned the military routines, went to the Naval Academy, and compared to Valley Forge, the Naval Academy's military was a piece of cake. We had all the Brits were teaching us how to march then, and the Valley Forge guys didn't have any trouble at the service academies. Went through there, finished, went through flight training, did well enough to get jets, which was a challenge back then, and on June 17, 1966, I was everywhere I'd wanted to be since I saw Captain Chuck Yeager flying that YP-80 back in 1947 at Fort Leavenworth. I was flying jets in combat, and I was in a 45-degree dive when there's a sudden explosion behind my head. The airplane started shaking, black smoke came pouring out of the air conditioning vents, and the thing flipped over from about 3,000 feet and headed straight down to the deck, and I punched out. Now, where's our master sergeant? Where'd he go? He talked about jumping out of airplanes lots of times, perfectly good airplanes. Well, this was not a good airplane, in good shape. It was on fire, exploding. The tail blew off it, and I made my first and only and last parachute jump. And it was not exactly, the folks who agreed to be on the ground were not real happy about my presence in their country. The next 2,432 days, 6 years and 8 months, I refer to as plebe year Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, and Hotel. But everything I learned here at Valley Forge during my plebe year helped me get through that. I think in a lot better shape than many people. I still had a sense of humor the entire time I was in Hanoi because I kept waiting for Major South to come out and start chewing me out for being out of step. But that never happened. But I considered myself the morale officer in there, and I did a lot of things I'd never done before, including writing singing commercials and doing a bunch of skits to keep cellmates happy and keep their spirits up. I am going to do something here that I don't normally do, which is cut this short, because I've just got a couple of things I want you to learn from my experience, and I'm humbled just to be on the same stage with these gentlemen and the Sergeant Major. Hua. There was a TV production that actually won an Emmy called Vietnam POWs Stories of Survival, and somehow or other I ended up getting in that thing, and we went through the whole, they did a very masterful job of editing it and working at pictures of airplanes getting blown up and you guys being tortured and stuff like that. It was really a miserable experience, particularly solitary confinement, which I'm pretty gregarious by nature. Solitary was tough. But I kept thinking there's really a learning experience there. The producers, the last question they asked was, what 3 things did you learn? This is going to be worked into the production. So what 3 things did you learn? I said, well, I learned a lot more than 3 things. 3 things, give us 3 things. I said, well, the first thing I learned was I wasn't as tough as I thought I was. it turned out, you're invincible when you're here. You learn that. You're going to get through anything. It's a piece of cake. Well, it's not necessarily a piece of cake. You're going to get through it, but you're not as tough as you think you are. The second thing I learned was no matter how bad I had it, personally, somebody else always had it worse. And I started thinking about them, and suddenly I wouldn't feel quite as bad. And I try and spend all my energy trying to help them, whatever they needed, to get through whatever they had to do. If they were in solitary confinement, I'd work with the other guys to try and get some communications to them, or whatever. But no matter how bad I had it, somebody else always had it worse. And the last thing, I couldn't think of a third thing. I'd say, come on, give us a third thing. We want three things. So I said, and this is actually engraved in stone now down in the Virginia War Memorial in what's laughingly called the Galante Education Center, which every teacher I had here and every prof at college, they knew they were naming something that had the words Galante and education in the same title. They do aileron rolls in their grave. This is in stone, believe it or not. But the biggest thing I learned there was there's no such thing as a bad day when there's a doorknob on the inside of the door. And there's several POWs here from the 106th Infantry Regiment captured at the Battle of the Bulge will probably agree with that. If you can get out of a place, you have a way to get out. There's no such thing as a bad day. And the last thing, since this is a military audience, and you probably had dinings in or something similar, when I was in the worst position, I just finished a 10-day stint of solitary confinement, chained to a stool, freezing in January in Hanoi, and I was miserable. And they came out, got me out of the room, threw me into this cell in solitary. And I was feeling really bad, and there's a tapping on the wall, and I went and put my ear to the wall and started listening, and it was Lieutenant Commander Jerry Coffey, a Navy POW, tapping on the wall to me. He said, I was feeling sorry for myself the other day, and I started thinking, we got it pretty lucky. So there were, we've had thousands and thousands and thousands of people killed in this war, and we're still alive. And I said, I wrote a toast that I'm going to use the first chance we get, first dining in, and it's now being repeated all over the military. The toast from Jerry Coffey, and we don't have anything to drink here. Pretend you got, depending on your preference, the highest potency of alcohol or water. And just imagine me sitting there with my ear to the wall, listening as Jerry Coffey tapped across. We toast our hardy comrades who are fallen from the sky, who are gently caught by God's own hand to dwell with him on high, to reign among the soaring clouds they knew so well before, from victory roll to tail chase at heaven's very door. And as we fly among them there, we sadly hear their plea, take care, my friends, and watch your six. Do one more roll for me. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your inspiring remarks to us today. Now we'll have a few minutes to questions. Captain McCormick, we have a question or two that we can. I'd like you to ask your question directed to one of the panelists. Captain McCormick will. When I was a cadet, we didn't like it when people planted questions for these things, so we didn't do that. So you know that we've got a long time. All right, so come on, Captain Inslee for questions. Captain Inslee wants to be Special Forces. Listen, we have Special Forces gentlemen here. That's the question.
Jumps out of airplanes for fun.
Can't hear you. Put that microphone down.
The gentleman was in Special Forces in the Army. When you
Speak up.
did you plan on going to be a medic at first, or what was your original plan when you were walking out of the forge? Did you always know what you wanted to do, and you just wanted to place the
Well, my plan coming out of Valley Forge was to be a 5-star general. Next question. No. I'll tell you what, my plan at Valley Forge was to get a commission and enter the infantry and go from there. Actually, there was an SFNCO that worked here at Valley Forge who happened to be, his last name was Ensley. Any relation to you?
I'm not sure to say that. I don't believe so.
You don't think so? Well, isn't that interesting? But anyway, yeah, Sergeant Major Ensley was a Special Forces NCO, very, very bright fellow.
Harvard graduate.
Harvard graduate as an NCO. So there is, don't discount your NCOs for you second lieutenants out there, or soon to be second lieutenants. Do not discount your NCOs as being uneducated. Okay, that's not the case anymore. So he was very, very inspirational man. And of course, I grew up reading war history, so I knew a little bit about the Special Forces. And actually, there was I guess it was about 1966 or 1967, there was I think a #1 hit at the time was a song sang by Staff Sergeant Barry Sadler, Battle of the Green Berets. And this may sound corny, but there's a line in that lyric that says, back at home, a young wife waits. Her green beret has met his fate. And somewhere it basically says, put silver wings on my son's chest, make him one of America's best. And that's what I aspire to.
Dr. Murray's World War II history class. Question from you. Yes.
Gentlemen, what was your hardest leadership position and how did you overcome it?
Hardest leadership position was commanding officer of an aircraft carrier. I never thought I'd get that far. But when you have a Marine Expeditionary Unit of 1,200 Marines on board, and you look at a Marine when he's standing guard at the White House, he's dressed shipshape, just as good as you guys look on Saturday or Sunday parade. And you take that Marine and put him in a mud hole with an M79 and an M1 or an AR-15, and he'll go to hell and back for you. But every time the Marines passed through some of my passageways, it was like Charlie Brown throwing paper gum and cigarette butts all over the place. We solved that. Cleanliness is next to godliness. And if you keep things clean, like your equipment, your rifle, your weapons, things get much easier when you're faced with combat. I served with the Marines for 12 years. I served with the Army for 14 months. And during that 14 months, as a lieutenant commander, major, I got into hand-to-hand combat with an overwhelming enemy force that breached our Army base perimeter. We had a Vietnamese battalion responsible for security. When the mortar attack began for the Tet Offensive, they took off their uniforms and melted into the night. That left our technicians for the helicopters and the aircraft and the flight crews to repel an overwhelming force. We were under siege for 10 days and 10 nights. The enemy had cut off our water supply, our electricity, and we went through hell in a handbasket. But we held them off until finally the 199th Light Division came in from Dong Tam. And that's when I won the Bronze Star and the Combat Infantry Badge from the Army. That was the toughest time.
ladies and gentlemen, I feel like World War II has been forgotten. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. I took part in the Battle of Monte Cassino. You won't believe it, but that battle lasted for 5 months. I led the first night attack, trying to displace the Germans, holding the other side of the Rapido River. In that battle alone, we suffered 350,000 casualties on both sides. On the American side alone, we lost 35,000 unknown. Obviously blown to pieces, never found. And that was just one battle, probably the most horrific battle of World War II in Europe. I was fighting on both flanks. I was wounded and have been wounded 4 times in action. I can't let anybody else put World War II way off in the background. We're still here. Thank you very much.
I was telling Commander Galante, and I want to prep him to say something here. When I was at Lee, at the Coast Guard Academy, he was shot down. So when I saw him come off the airplane in February of 1973, I was a lieutenant. So my entire 4 years in an officer program and then trying to be an officer for 3 years was spent while he was in jail. For our country, for us. He asked why he's here with these other gentlemen, and he's here because we need to hear that story. We need to hear. We all sacrifice different ways. Each generation is called to do different things. And every day in those 7 years that Commander Galante was in prison, on the news every night, there was a story about Vietnam. There was a story about, mostly there was a negative story about Vietnam. Well, they always mentioned the prisoners of war. We had movie stars going to Hanoi saying, and going on TV and how great the coast were. People like Commander Galante's wife were on TV occasionally saying, no, it's not true. I know my husband's being tortured. I know that the Vietnamese and North Vietnamese are not following the Geneva Conventions. And we should not believe the propaganda. So the Vietnamese responded by torturing these gentlemen to make sure that they would confess, make sure that they would, their point of view is wrong as well, would be known to the world. And I wonder if you could comment on that.
I wasn't going to comment on that leadership because I was a Lieutenant JG. I barely made lieutenant when I was shot down. A junior officer in this thing, but I saw the finest leadership ever done by anybody in Hanoi by later Vice Admiral James Bond Stockdale, who was our senior Navy POW. He was sort of in charge of it, wrote a piece called The World of Epictetus later that was published in the New Yorker magazine. Jim Stockdale ordered all of us to go on a hunger strike. Now, you hear about world hunger and it's abstract, and you can talk about hunger down here and they have food kitchens and stuff like that, but they're not hungry. They don't know what hunger is. And you don't know what hunger is until you've had all the way down, there's few people in this room that know what it is. When you get down, you've lost body, you lost every ounce of fat, plus every muscle, and you're down to just bones. And the senior officer orders you to do a hunger strike to get some action out of the camp authorities, to start taking care of some sick POWs. That was moral courage, and that was leadership. That's the kind of stuff you learn here. I didn't have to do it, but I followed it, and everybody else, even in solitary confinement. Nobody would know whether or not we did it, but we did, because we wanted to let the enemy know that we had a military organization, and what the skipper said went, and we followed it. And it applied to everything I've ever done since. I mean, as a junior officer, I went in had just barely made 03 and came out as a very senior 04, which is a big jump in the military. So I learned a lot of leadership down low by watching the masters at work in Hanoi. I never went to the Navy War College. I didn't go to all those other schools, but it was sort of like the sergeant here at Valley Forge, who never went to college, and taught me the only thing I remember verbatim from this place, the key word BASS, breathe, aim, sight, squeeze. And that one sergeant taught me that. Just like our senior officers in Hanoi taught me what leadership was all about.
Thank you, sir.
Just 1 second. I mean, when I won the Distinguished Service Cross, it was pinned on my chest by Admiral Olson, a Navy SEAL. And I had no remarks prepared at the time, but he turned the stage over to me. And in that moment of panic in my mind, something burned through clear. I could look into the audience at that ceremony, and I saw old soldiers, just as I see old soldiers here. Damn, I think I'm one now. But was something that struck me. I mean, I was being recognized for a moment of courage, a moment of valor. But I knew out there in that audience, there were plenty of other soldiers, plenty of other people, plenty of single mothers, widows, gals who were there with their loved ones forward, raising children. Those are the people who have leadership challenges. Those are the people who are often not recognized for valor. I was being recognized for a moment of valor. We're helping out a couple of soldiers in need. I think John Kennedy said, when asked when he won a medal for valor, or
Navy Marine Corps medal.
The Navy Marine Corps medal for saving the crew members of the PT-109. He said something along the lines of, I had no choice. They sank my boat. I'm telling you that I may be recognized for valor, but the fact is that it wasn't the man, it was the moment. And any one of you and anyone here could be recognized for that moment of valor. The greatest leadership challenge, let me tell you, is within you. Is the preparation that you need to lead. If you're going to lead soldiers into combat, if you're going to lead a school, if you're going to lead a classroom filled with children, the leadership that you display is in the preparation for those moments. The leadership challenge is within yourself. It's preparation. Valley Forge is a good start for preparation.
What was the first thing you did after 6 years after being a POW?
It's a mixed audience.
Now you remember I hadn't seen my wife for 7.5 years. The second thing I did was eat a huge steak and a half a gallon of ice cream.
Are there any other questions?
Can we hear from one of our international students?
Any international guys want to ask a question? Go ahead.
Speak up, Greg.
In the South Russian immigrants, how does it feel like to go to the United States military and to against the
Я не зрозумів.
I remember as a child being in the theater during World War II, watching the American Lend-Lease ships offloading equipment in Russia. I remember the P-39 Bel Air Cobras being sent to Russia. And during one of those Pathé News programs, a couple of my high school, no, I was junior high school at that time, classmates turned to me and said, if we ever went to war with Russia, which side would you be on? I've flown 450 combat missions. I've done ground combat, and I would always be an American.
Are there any other questions for the panel? One more, go ahead.
How did you motivate your troops through hard times?
Which one?
I don't know, Sergeant Major.
Sergeant Major.
I'm sorry, your question?
How did you motivate your troops through hard times?
Can anyone answer that question? Leadership. Personal example. At a critical time in the Battle of the Cayuga, I had volunteered to go out and lead the QRF, Quick Reaction Force. And I did my map recon, and I'm looking at things, and this wide-eyed soldier looks at me and goes, "Where are we going?" And I just turned to him and I said, "To the sound of the guns. To the sound of the guns. Leadership. Follow me."
I'll give you another example of valor. It was during that push into Iraq. And out of an armored personnel carrier, a medic ran out and picked a soldier up from the field who was seriously wounded. And there were some newspaper people in the carrier, and they were yelling and screaming at the guy and said, "Don't you see he's an enemy soldier?" And the medic looked at him glaringly and said, "Don't you see he's a human being?" And that's what it's all about. We could have a much more peaceful world if we all acted as human beings using the golden rule. Confucius said it. Other great wizards of the day have claimed that. And yet mankind still goes on into conflict, usually over material things, the robbing and raping of Africa, the money taken from the Jews by the Nazis. I've walked the prison camps. They're hallowed halls just like our Alamo, where the dead lay and their ghosts still appear. And for what? For the lack of human courage to be peaceful. It takes a lot of internal fortitude to reign with peace. You have to work at it. You can't get angry. You can't throw a fist. You don't draw a weapon, but you offer your hand. You offer your hand in peace and love of human kindness. And with that, I wish you a tremendous career, each and every one of you. You are special. You are getting training that no one else in these United States is getting. Be you from a foreign land,
from the South Americans, from Europe, from China, Vietnam, Thailand. I've been to all those places, and there are people who want peace. And we must guard, solemnly guard, to keep that peace. God bless you all.
This is a pretty personal question. I know that like years will not come back, and there was a couple of years. There were years.
Start over.
I know that years will not never come back. So about the change of your life, like before and after you come back to the country.
Well, it's kind of an old movie now, but I know you probably heard of the movie Top Gun. That's a movie that Tom Cruise made a few years after he shot the one in Valley Forge in the background, the Taps. Top Gun, Tom Cruise was this wild, cocky, young F-14 fighter pilot ripping around the skies, doing cursing, chasing girls all around the thing. Well, that was kind of like me. In fact, fortunately, there were no witnesses then. They didn't have video cameras. They couldn't take pictures of you with a thing, or I'd be in deep trouble. But they had. I was kind of and I'm not sure how much Valley Forge contributed to that, but I had a lot of fun. My squadron nickname, I wasn't Maverick or Goose or any of those names they had in Top Gun. I was the Onager. And if you look up in the dictionary, an onager, O-N-A-G-E-R, is described as a wild ass of Asia. Anyway, that's what I was before. But I came back and I became much more sedate. And I became just an old FUD, sort of like Captain Weseleski. And I started behaving myself.
Excuse me for butting in here. I think I was invited for seniority. And before I accept that position, I wanted you to know the most senior person that I can remember at Valley Forge is with us today, Willie Kuhn. Willie, will you stand up? Willie has been everything at Valley Forge. A wonderful guy. So I wanted you all to know him. Willie has more old stories about Valley Forge Military Academy than anyone else in this room. Excuse me.
This is for the two gentlemen who served World War II. I was wondering how you got able to overcome the fear of your first combat, knowing that you were facing some of the best men that bested all the armies of the world, but Nazi Germany or nationalist Japanese. Or that ever even skipped your mind?
I believe the question is, how do you handle fear? Fortunately, if you're a non-commissioned officer or an officer, your primary duty and concentration is for your men. Sorry. Your fear actually is, you don't even think about it. You have a job to do, and you do it. And regardless of the opposing enemy, all you're concentrating on is what is immediately in your front. Not on your flanks, but your front. And you do the job as you see fit at that time to save your men and to take the objective. fear really doesn't pay that much of a problem for you unless you're cut off behind the enemy lines, which I have had the experience of doing, and lying right next to a German tank 2 feet away. And I thought I was going to be crushed, and it didn't happen, fortunately. That is the only time I can remember of having real fear. Thank you very much.
To amplify on that, when under extreme strain, with everything seemingly against you, it's something that you will experience perhaps. I have several times. You have a time expansion. Many people who practice yoga try to attain this, but it seems like everything is in slow motion except you. Fear is eliminated. You do what has to be done. If you're faced with a problem that you've never faced before, trust me, you'll figure it out in those moments of time expansion. You have the basis of everything you need being taught right here at Valley Forge. The unique part about the episode is once it's over, you're going to be scared as hell. And you may even pass out. But you're going to make it, and you're going to do well. It takes courage. You've got the honor, and the conquer is you have to conquer your fear. You can do that.
I got to pile on here. So, I'm an Irishman. I think Dr. Murray, the G.K. Chesterton, who said, the Irish are the race that God made mad. For all their songs, all their wars are happy, and all their songs are sad. One of the ways that I faced fear was my irrepressible sense of humor. I laughed at everything that was going on around me. I think someone might, probably a manic laughter. I was getting machine gun bullets were passing through my camelback, and I was being sprayed with hot water. I didn't know if it was blood or water, but I started laughing. I looked over to the one side, and there was an Afghan soldier who was down behind a low brick wall, and the machine guns were chewing that wall away. And I saw him do like a backflip roll away, and I started laughing. I was working on the wounded soldier who unfortunately passed. An RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade round, hit the berm in front of me and landed, plop, right there in front of my face. And I took a breath, and I started laughing. Because I could. Because I could. One thing about panic and fear, it's very, very contagious. If you display fear and panic, the next person next to you may do the same thing.
Sympathetic.
Sympathetic detonation. Yeah, there you go. Sympathetic detonation. So, it's all a matter of perspective. I told you that I was an avid reader of history. I knew what soldiers had gone through in previous wars. In my combat experience, measured in hours. He had a 5-month battle at Monte Cassino where 350,000 souls were affected, some of them forever. I would say all of them forever. So it's all perspective. You do your preparation, realize what you're going into, and the rest will come. It really will. Always keep a good sense of humor, though.
One of the books I had to read at Kansas State when I was getting my master's in history was J. Glenn Gregg's Warriors, Reflections of Men in Battle. And there's a chapter in there about love, why soldiers love one another. And what I see the men on this platform is that they all got these awards for saving their fellows who they loved. And Captain Wozleski talked about love. And the prisoners of war loved one another. The respect that Lieutenant Commander Galante or Captain? Captain Galante. He loves James Bond Stockdale. And Stockdale loved his men. And they had this respect for one another that is brought together under a crisis because everyone knows the other guy would do the same thing for them. And that's why we come here, and what they're talking about, why they did it, is that they loved one.
I'd like to thank our panel for their, as I said earlier, their inspiring time with us today. Appreciate that, your thought, deep thought about what they presented. And as they said, your life is before you. Now it's time for preparation. I only have a couple months. And my friend Nixon's only here a couple months, and it had a great effect on him. It had a great effect on you. Turn it over to first captain.
All right. Give one more round of applause for our band.
States Navy. States Air Force. States Marine Corps.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. Fight for right and is our guide, our faith, our glory too. To fight, to save, or fight and die, like was we are for you.
And the United States Army.